Mozart's Clarinet Concerto was the last complete instrumental work he wrote, completing it just literally within 2 months of his own death in late 1791. And it's always a pleasure to be here in the City Halls in Glasgow, together with the BBC Scottish Symphony Orchestra and their leader Elizabeth Layton, and the brilliant British clarinetist Emma Johnson. Emma, very warm welcome to you. Lovely to have you with us. Let's clear up something right at the very first, which is that this is a concerto not specifically for clarinet, but actually for a much lesser-known instrument, the basset clarinet. Can you tell us why Mozart chose the basset clarinet, and what are the sort of origins of the instrument?
Mozart was really in love with the clarinet and was one of the first composers to take it seriously and really write a lot of music for it. He was very friendly with a great clarinetist of the day, Anton Stadler. Now, Stadler was very keen on developing the clarinet, so he was always experimenting with adding new notes to extend the range of the clarinet. He developed something called the basset clarinet, which is the normal A clarinet that we know today, but it in fact has an extra 4 semitones on the bottom, so it gives it a tremendous range. I think that really inspired Mozart.
And Mozart, ever the practical man, I mean, Stadler was a very close friend of his. Remarkably, Anton Stadler was, as far as we know, the only man who has actually managed to borrow money from the penniless Mozart, which he never paid back. It's a sorry tale, but anyway, he made up for it, I'm sure, with his playing. Looking at the instrument here, which obviously the listeners can't see it at home, it's longer and, well, I don't know if it's fatter, but it's certainly longer than the conventional clarinet, which is how, obviously, it achieves these lower pitches.
Yes, it's longer, and it's quite an unwieldy beast. As you see, it's sort of bristling with keys, which might explain why it immediately went obsolete after Stadler's death. Also, we have Stadler to blame for the fact that we don't actually have the original manuscript. Stadler, in fact, pawned it in order to get some money. So we're really extrapolating and sort of guessing which parts of the concerto would have used these extra low notes.
And you've actually made your own version of the piece, haven't you, for basset clarinet, given that the published version of the piece only exists in a version for A clarinet, which obviously doesn't take into account all the lower pitches that Mozart was so keen to seize upon. One of the interesting things about the piece, I think, is the choice of key. It's A major, which always draws out a particular kind of lovely sort of limpid flow from Mozart. Another glorious example of a concerto in A major for Mozart is the Piano Concerto No. 23, which even starts with the first same few notes that this concerto starts with. A lovely kind of warm openness to the sound. One other point, particularly relating to sound, or indeed to colour, Mozart was very clear about how to score this piece. In a concerto of this sort, you'd expect at the very least to have 2 oboes with the 2 bassoons and the 2 horns. Mozart decides, instead of oboes, to have flutes, creating a more kind of sensuous underlay upon which the clarinet can ride. Emma, it's very clear right from the outset that Mozart is determined to explore the most extreme reaches of Stadler's basset clarinet.
It gives the whole piece a very operatic feel, almost as though you have a soprano and a baritone voice at the same time. And also, I think, for Mozart, the clarinet was quite a daring instrument. It was extremely new. It wasn't really an accepted part of the normal symphony orchestra.
Isn't it true that he'd heard clarinets for the first time in the Mannheim Orchestra, with this amazing orchestra, like the toast of Europe at the time? They were known as being an army of generals, in the sense that every single instrumentalist was an extraordinarily accomplished soloist in their own right. So it was then that he saw the possibility of the clarinet, which had only recently emerged from what was the chalumeau before.
Exactly, yes, it was really a sort of peasant instrument. But now there was this, it's sort of a mix between something that was called the clarinet, but was really more of a trumpet, and the chalumeau, which was this shepherd's instrument, which was an incredible thing and enabled him to use such a huge range. But also, I think he liked the darkness of the timbre. It was kind of almost a subversive instrument as well. He used it a lot in his Masonic music. So for him, I think it had connotations of being anti-establishment and, you know, perhaps against the aristocracy. The
Masonic Brotherhood was at that time quite a kind of quite a revolutionary outfit.
In fact, it was beginning to be banned by the king. So, yes, and the clarinet was very much involved with that and used for Masonic ritual music.
And his friend Anton Stadler was also a Mason, so I guess they talked about it a lot when they were within the walls of the Masonic house, if that's what one calls it. Interestingly, you made the analogy with the human voice earlier. There was a critic who said in about 1789 of Stadler's playing that one would never have thought that the clarinet could imitate the human voice to such perfection. Emma, there's an incredibly strong sense of chamber music to this piece. It has such a strong familial relationship, I suppose, particularly with the clarinet quintet, which is written around about the same kind of time. Sense of, in its mood, its texture, and I suppose the fact that the phrases and the parts completely fold out of each other.
Yes, in fact, dare I say it, the original performances would have been without conductor, just from the solo instrument.
Always a good thing. The final movement of Mozart's clarinet concerto is an elaborate rondo. Rondo, the Italian word meaning round, essentially one tune, principally one tune, which comes round and round and round in a variety of different guises. Now, the varied pace of this main theme, you'll hear there's kind of hesitancy coupled with sort of helter-skelter. Each time the theme comes round, Mozart varies it in one or other respect, but you get this sense it's a bit stop or starty. He's having fun with us. Emma, Mozart loved the swagger of 6/8, didn't he? Essentially 2 beats in the bar, but each beat subdivided into 3 to get this real and he really makes fun of that, or has fun with that, with the clarinet.
Yes, it does have a kind of outdoors feeling almost, so that we see the other side of the clarinet, not the dark side, but he really does have fun, and there's some very virtuoso writing in this movement.
Well, here's a lovely example of Mozartian continuity, like what I was talking about earlier. The chattering semiquavers of the clarinet become now a driving downward figure in their own right for the violins. And suddenly, a stop, which takes confidence, let's face it. Any composer who can write a gap in his music or her music is supremely confident in their material. Mozart seems to be taking us in a new direction. And you hear there, the melody is passed from the bass instruments of the orchestra right to the very top of the orchestra. But still with that strong hallmark, the varied pacing of the music of this theme, bursts of adrenaline alongside moments of reflection. Now, exactly at this point, we get the second subject, the second main theme of the movement. Again, totally transparent scoring set around it, and a thoroughly contrasted character to that of the first subject.